All right, we're going to have a look at what oil is doing right now. It had pushed past $118, closing in on $120 on the weekend, U.S., of course, a barrel, and remained elevated today in the sort of $96, $97 range. But moments ago, the U.S. president said that the war with Iran could soon be over. He was speaking apparently in a phone interview with CBS. Let's start there with Reid I'Anson, economist at Kpler. He joins us now. Everything with Donald Trump is very whipsaw, as we've come to know. What's your take on how quickly we could see a reflection in oil? And again, he has said before, rolled out a timeline of a month or more. So this answer changes. Will this be a material move, you think? We haven't really seen it yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's, quite impressive to watch the shifts in oil price just moment to moment, even today. That upper wick on WTI touching 120 per barrel and now looking to test below 90. But I think it is important to keep in mind that for now, given the, effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz, that's 10% of global supply that's not getting to market, right? Pre-war, you were looking at 13 million barrels per day of oil and another, 2.5 to 3 million barrels per day of transportation fuels flowing through there. That is a considerable amount of supply loss. And so I think all eyes are going to be on, does the Strait get reopened? It's interesting kind of seeing the Trump comments kind of realizing, a need to kind of get that Strait reopened. And so we'll see if the U.S. military can make progress on that front.
Yeah, apparently he is now, the U.S. president, mulling over taking over the Strait of Hormuz, which to me sounds like a whole different conflict if America tries to do that. Factor in Saudi Arabia for me, because there are reports Saudi Arabia is going to be cutting production as a result of running out of room to put their oil. Do you think that weighed heavily on any decision or comment by the American president?
I think, of course, the GCC partners with the United States are obviously playing a role in how the Trump administration is thinking about this war. It is important to keep in mind, though, states like Iraq and the UAE are a bit more constrained than Saudi. Saudi does have a 7 million barrel per day east to west pipeline that allows them to export somewhere between 4 to 5 million barrels per day out of the Yanbu port in the Red Sea. So Saudi has a little bit more optionality to work around the Strait of Hormuz issues than some of the other players bordering the Mideast Gulf at this time.
So the capacity for Saudi Arabia's pipeline, then they could up it if they want to. Is that a possibility?
They're already doing that. The East-West pipeline was already doing something somewhere around 2.5 million barrels per day of flow pre-war. We've seen that double over the last week. And so I think it is realistic to think that, Saudi can push somewhere between 2 to 2.5 million barrels per day of additional crude via that East-West pipeline. That does provide them some optionality here.
Reid, talk to me about China and India and how heavily they are affected by the Strait being pretty much shut down to transportation of energy as compared to North America.
Yeah, Asia is highly reliant on Mideast crude. However, the coverage due to domestic stock levels varies a lot across the major import economies in Asia. Places like China and Japan are pretty well set up to handle an extended outage, say 4 months of import coverage. South Korea kind of sits in the middle range there, say maybe 3 months of coverage. But India is very exposed, about a month of domestic demand coverage at this point. So again, I think that's why you're seeing the Trump administration as well kind of allow the Indians to start importing more Russian crude and easing those sanctions a bit, because there is an understanding that India in particular does not have a lot of domestic inventory availability, and they need to be importing crude from abroad. Keep in mind that pre-war, 80% of Indian crude supply was flowing from the Middle East.
Okay, Reid, I got to leave it there. I'm out of time with you, sir, but thank you for your time. Reid I'Anson is an economist at Kpler.